Greetings and bienvenue, MITZU. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Good evening, X. I want to tell you a story that I think will provide some intrigue. This is an account of a friend I made last year, who I will call Luke, what he told me, and how he died just a few weeks after I met him. Most of this will be a description as my memory provides it of a person who most would consider to just be mentally ill, but there is a detail towards the end which leaves me not knowing what to think. I hope you all will find it to be a worthwhile read. First, the setting. I spent 6 months last year in a drug and alcohol treatment program. This program has clients graduate down to lower levels of care, beginning at partial hospitalization, then 2 levels of intensive outpatient, then outpatient, where a person can stay as long as they want or need. The male clients are housed in a row of townhouses which sits perpendicular to the street they are on. A clinic which offers the program's therapeutic and medical services sits a couple of miles away, and the clients are regularly bused back and forth from the apartments to the clinic through the week. The townhouses are 3 stories high. The ground floor for these apartments are unfinished, with the exception of one unit containing the office for the behavioral tech staff on the ground level. The second floor has the kitchen and living room, and the third floor contains 3 bedrooms which house up to 5 people. When Luke arrived as a new partially hospitalized client, I was in the intensive outpatient stage of the program. He moved into the same apartment unit which contains the tech office. He had a bedroom which houses 2, but he was in there by himself, as there were 2 others in that apartment, and each of them had a bedroom to themselves. This story won't be that long, though I am writing as I go. I will greentext what I can, and if anybody's curiosity is piqued, I'll answer any questions I can. And please use this thread to share your experiences, whether they are similar to my story or not. Before I even met Luke, I was told by the tech, Travis, who went to pick him up, that he did not belong there because he was mentally ill. During their hour drive back to the facility, Luke told this tech that he was in regular contact with aliens and was able to affect physical objects with only his mind. Luke had no perception that he was delusional, being utterly confident that his experiences were real. Luke was around the age of 40. He was very thin and preferred to keep to himself, but he was perfectly friendly and cordial. He spoke in a voice that seemed a bit unnatural. He was slightly nasally and high-pitched, but not excessively so. He spoke with a stutter and his hands shook. Those things were not drug-related. He had some medical issues which he had lived with since childhood that caused the shake and stutter. He took more medications than I have ever seen anybody take, but I learned from Travis after Luke's passing that none of them were psychiatric medications. They were all for his physical health. I was once in the tech office while he was taking his meds, and the desk was just covered in pill bottle and those perforated card sheets that pills sometimes come in. Luke was not quite like schizophrenics I have known. He did not spend his time trapped in delusion, and I never saw him distraught like schizos often are. He was perfectly capable of engaging people on regular, everyday terms. All of the other clients in the program welcomed him and were friendly to him. Luke was a talented artist. This part of him was particularly inspiring to me. Despite the fact that his hands were always shaking, he spent a great deal of his free time painting landscapes on small canvases with acrylic paint. That was how he passed his free time, as he kept to himself. Just a few days after his arrival, Luke had an episode in the middle of the night. He perceived that one of the aliens which had tracked and harassed him was present and there to harm him. He reacted by painting an image of this thing on the wall of his bedroom. I did not live in that unit, and I never saw it, but descriptions I heard from a couple of others described it as a stereotypical-looking gray, small with a bulbous head and eyes and plain, nondescript features. As I recall, he painted it blue. Since he used acrylics, it was easily washed off of the wall the following day. Luke got it together, offered an apology, and said he wouldn't do it again. He did not. Life in the program proceeded as normal. Maybe a week after that, I had the opportunity to sit and speak with him one-on-one for about an hour. He told me quite a lot. I didn't quite process all of what he told me because of his speech impediment and because there was so much of it. A few months prior, Luke had been homeless in the woods, just barely getting by and using drugs. His sister stayed in touch with him and insisted he get some help somewhere. Luke relented and went with her to a different treatment program. The place was a 2-story little shithole with access to almost no resources. While he was there, he showed a couple of people around him that he had psychic powers. He showed a woman that he could change his finished paintings just by staring at them. They changed shapes and colors right in front of her. He showed another client that he could move objects with his mind. By staring at a huge rock, small boulder, he caused it to shift position by a few inches. As he was telling me these things, he repeatedly insisted, "I'm not making this up. I swear to God, this really happened. One night he got another client to wait outside and watch with him because they were coming. After about an hour of watching and waiting, a group of small humanoid creatures walked single file down the road, across the street. They were 2 feet tall, pale, white, and naked. Bulbous head and eyes like a gray. They were led by one that was a foot taller than the rest. The leader wore a black robe but otherwise looked the same. The other client saw them and was scared shitless and ran inside, but Luke was fascinated. They carried on and never paid attention to him. One night while Luke was in his upstairs bedroom, he saw through the closed door. A portal opened in the hallway. A female alien came through. It was coming for him. He ran to the door, gripped the doorknob tightly, and forced his body up against the door to keep it closed. It spent the entire night taunting and mocking him, telling him to open the door and let her in. He refused and spent the whole night holding the door closed. He knew that she would kill him if she got to him. The next morning she let up and went back through the portal, and he collapsed on the ground against the door. Shortly after, he went downstairs. The other clients were scared of him. They said he spent the entire night banging the door and screaming. They called the cops on him. Though Luke had never been arrested before, he did not like the police. He refused to tell the officer anything and refused to go with him. He warned Luke that he could forcibly take him. Luke began to argue with him. He was handcuffed and put into the cop car and taken to a psych ward. Luke refused to cooperate with the hospital staff, saying his rights were violated. He was there only a few days. Travis picked him up from there and brought him to the program where I met him. At this point, I think it becomes apparent that this rehab is fairly unprofessional and negligent and cares most about billing people's insurance companies. That's not what this story is about, but it's worth pointing out here, I think. So life goes on normally. Luke's 2 roommates told me that he would often have conversations with 2 people or things that were not there or that they could not see. I did not witness this myself, but from what I heard, he was friendly with these invisible things. He spoke very casually with them. Luke's roommates were good to him. When he was standing there talking to nobody, his roommates were there to invite him to sit and watch TV with them, or hang out with them, or get him to cook or paint. They kept him grounded and they were friends. I'll point it out here that Luke never told me about his invisible companions, never told anybody about them. That is peculiar to me because of how much else he told me about his experiences. What happened next started on a Friday. At this time, I had the option of which group therapy sessions I would attend at the clinical office. I was required to attend 3 per week. I always went on Fridays because there was a group where this delightful, professional, insightful young blonde therapist ran a group where we listened to music and did art projects. That Friday, we were drawing on plain white paper with a choice of crayons or colored pencils. She always had a prompt for us, but I don't remember what it was that day. It was at this point I first noticed that Luke was beginning to retreat into his own world. He was preoccupied with himself, and I wasn't able to reach him in conversation. While he was gathering his choice of pencils, I heard him say,
"This is it. This is gonna be it."
My interpretation at the time, which I still believe, was that Luke believed he was going to produce some kind of truth or revelation that he thought he needed. He drew a kind of landscape. In the foreground on the left was a tree with a man sitting beneath it. He said that man was himself. In the background was a mountain. He drew it such that the shape of a winged angel could be seen in it, if that makes sense. It was a subtle shape but obviously there. In the sky above the mountain was a face. The face was blue, and it was made out of jigsaw puzzle pieces. Saturday. The next day was not a clinical day. The PHP clients, Nick included, went to some outside activity I didn't have to do at that point. They probably went bowling, I don't know. That night, the PHPs had to attend an AA meeting. I did not have to go, but I liked that meeting, so I attended. I sat next to Luke. I liked the man very much and considered him a friend, and I was worried about him. Before the meeting started, he picked up a napkin and a pen and set them on the table in front of him. He sat silently for a few minutes. Shortly after the meeting began, he said the exact same thing he had said the day before.
"This is it. This is gonna be it."
In the middle of that meeting, I got up to use the bathroom and then went looking for him. He was out on the sidewalk in front of the church, sitting with the napkin on his thigh, drawing and writing on it with the pen. I chose not to disturb him and went back inside. I wouldn't see that napkin again until the following week, after his tragic passing. It was on the floor of the transport van. Most of what he put on it was unintelligible scribbles. What I could make out was a drawing of what I think were a trio of those little pale gnome things he told me about. Next to it were the words, "What are they?" After the meeting, back at the apartments, I was finishing up my nightly routine. I was edgily breaking the rules by smoking a cigarette on the small second-floor balcony. This balcony exited from the kitchen and was on the backside of the building, that is, on the opposite side of the long driveway where the entrances to the identical apartments opened to a tiny landing to the staircase leading up to the second floor. I smoked cigarettes out there every day and night. There I saw something I had never seen before and never saw since. I was facing a small 2-story duplex neighboring our building. On the other side of that duplex was a tree just taller than that next-door building. I should have found this out, but I don't know what type of tree it is, but I know it's not an evergreen. This is a fairly tall, very thin and spindly tree with fairly sparse limbs. It is not a tree that somebody could feasibly climb. At the very top of the tree, there was a tiny red light, facing my direction. Though it was dark, I could tell that this light was actually in the tree because it swayed wildly back and forth in broad swaths with the wind. I thought at the time was that I was looking at a camera. I finished my cigarette and went downstairs and outside again. There were 2 people down there, sitting and smoking. One of them was a tech staff, the other was a client, an elder, a veteran, and a good friend. Without stopping, I interrupted them, saying, "Hey, y'all come with me. I want to show you something." They immediately got up and followed me as we walked around the street facing one side of the building to the other side, where we could see this tree. It was here that I could see that the red light was pointing at our apartments, because it was only visible from a certain small set of angles. As I walked up, I thought it had turned off because I couldn't see it at first. But as we got to the same angle where I had just been from the balcony, we could all see the light clearly. We spent a few minutes over cigarettes, speculating and freaking out a little bit. The only thing we could think was that it was a camera, but we also all 3 agreed that there was no way somebody had climbed that tree. Perhaps it was a drone. But it was fastened to the top of this tree because it maintained its spot perfectly even as it waved violently back and forth in the heavy wind. The other client and I both resolved that we would inspect it the next day. We both did check it out, but not together. As I recall, he said that he saw a wire running up the tree. I did not. When I looked the next day, I didn't see anything at all there. For what it is worth, I detected in my time there that this other client is one to embellish what he says. I don't think he was lying, but I don't know that he perceived what was there perfectly accurately. He and I never did discuss this much again. Anyway, Sunday was the day where nothing happened. There's no clinic and no outing. Not even an AA meeting. One of the techs would ask us about our goals for the week so they could send that out to our insurance companies. So that means that most clients sat around and watched football, and those of us inclined to take care would cook, clean, and organize. Sometimes we'd pull out the cornhole set and play in the driveway. This was a lazy Sunday. Late in the AM, I walked out into the driveway and saw Luke standing in the doorway to his apartment. I mentioned earlier that he stayed in the unit which contains the tech office. That means that all of the clients were in and out of that door at all hours of the day. For meds, to complain about stupid things or legitimate things, or to sit in the office and hang out with the tech on staff, who usually are addicts or alcoholics in recovery. These doors opening to the driveway were not constructed to close automatically, but the door to this unit had something wrong with it. It would loudly swing shut unless it was held open or gently, manually closed. This was a great annoyance to those who lived in that apartment. It even had a sign on the door that most people rudely ignored. So Luke was standing in this doorway, going and back and forth between either side of the threshold, holding the door open with either his arm or his body. He had a flathead screwdriver, which I am sure he simply asked for and was given. He was gingerly poking it into the door jamb seal on the sides and the top of the door frame. He was not doing any prying or even damaging it. He was just lightly poking it under that rubber seal and then withdrawing the screwdriver. To my perception, his actions were determined, but random, gentle, and skittish. He was focused and into what he was doing. I approached him and asked, "You okay, Luke?"
Yeah, I'm fine. There's just air in here.
"Are you sure? Do you want some help?"
No, I've got it. Thank you, though.
Looking back, I don't think he even looked at me during this little exchange. At this point, I was a bit exasperated with Luke. I wasn't frustrated, but I felt like reaching out just didn't do anything. For a few days now, he was just absorbed in his own thinking. He was not presenting any kind of need for intervention. He did not appear distressed, but he had little interest in his surroundings and the people around. So I let him be. The tech was literally feet away from him and didn't mind. So I didn't either. He kept at that door, though. After a while, some other clients interrupted him. They seemed to think he was trying to fix the door from slamming, so they got the screwdriver and took it to the hinges. Luke went upstairs while the clients poked at the door. I didn't see Luke again until after dark. I was sitting right outside my unit in the driveway with one of my 2 roommates. We were smoking cigs, and he was telling me about some Discord drama he had gotten into through World of Warcraft. Our unit was the first of the row, next to the street, and Luke's unit was the adjacent one. We're sitting there, and there's a loud bang on the ground right next to us. It was the window screen from Luke's bedroom. He had just pushed it out of the window, and it fell 3 stories to the ground. We, startled, looked over, realized what it was, and we looked up. Luke's poking his head out of the window.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to fix a hole.
The screen had no holes in it. It was perfectly intact even after falling 3 stories. Travis walked outside to see what caused the loud noise, picked up the screen, brought it inside. I expressed that I am worried that Luke is going to climb out of the window, then my roomie and I continue talking about his World of Warcraft drama. Just maybe 3 minutes later, Luke pokes his head out of the 3rd-story window again and says,
Oh, what? Oh, it's open. Oh, okay.
Regretfully, I ignore this and continue to shoot the shit with A. He and I and one other are the only ones outside. M is at the opposite, back end of the row of units, smoking by himself. Again, just minutes pass. It's less than 10 minutes between the screen falling and this. I see something above me from the corner of my eye. It's what I feared. Luke's legs are dangling out of the 3rd-story window. He's face down, such that his belly is on the window frame, his torso in his bedroom. Oh shit. I get up, walk in a wide berth so he doesn't fall on me. Luke, please climb back inside. He says nothing. I run to the door to his unit and throw it open. Travis is standing there in the tiny landing, and he is tragically, comedically holding the window screen, probably trying to think what the hell he should do. He's hanging out the window. He drops the screen and starts bounding up the stairs 2 at a time. I'm right behind him. We ran across the 2nd floor and up the next flight. We reached the top landing. He looks at me.
Which room?
I'm panicked. I don't know. He runs into the room at the end of the short hall. It's empty. At this point, one of Luke's roommates had been discharged after 30 days. The other had moved to a different unit because he stepped down to IOP. He backs out of that room and rushes into the other room which faces the driveway.
Go.
Down.
Yes, go.
Now I'm in front of Travis, racing down the stairs. As we're at the bottom flight, M is holding the door open. Call the ambulance. Travis is already on the phone. We emerge to the driveway and see Luke face down on the pavement. I'm the first one to speak. Everybody give him space. Don't touch him.
Oh, it hurts.
I know you're hurting, Luke. We're getting you some help right now. Please don't move. We don't want to touch you, and we don't want you to move because we don't want you to get hurt any worse. He's moaning and he stops talking as he passes out. Sirens and flashing lights show up. Nearly everybody comes outside. The police question everybody. They start profiling him because he's Puerto Rican as you can get, and he starts unpromptedly volunteering that he thought Luke was trying to die. They thought M pushed Luke. I squashed that when they asked me about it. M held the door open for myself and Travis as we raced to the ground level. They're there for probably an hour and a half. Right before the police depart, I ask one of them if they can give us any information. He says that it doesn't look like Luke is going to make it because he has so much internal bleeding. The following morning is Monday, the start of the clinical week, and we find out first thing that Luke became deceased in the night. I don't want to go into detail, especially because I absolutely should not know anything further due to Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. But I find out from multiple staff that the administration have utterly bungled this mess, and the last I heard, they were in the beginning stages of litigation with his family. I've since left, and I am no longer in the loop. I'll say that his loving sister showed up that week to pick up his things. She explicitly left all of his painting supplies there because she knew that he was a friend to us. The clinical staff promised that we would do something to commemorate him. They did nothing at all. It was Travis who went out of his way to get us some food and set up a space and time for us to paint and talk about Luke. Rest in peace, my late friend. I'll follow with a take on what I think. I became introduced to Jerry Marzinski right here on 4chan in the same way many here did when the wormhole swept the boards. I had already felt certain that schizo hallucinations are pretty much some degree of entity or demonic involvement rather than pure delusion. Marzinski helped me to be sure. When I sat with Luke for that hour that day, I didn't offer an opinion. He didn't ask for it. I simply asked questions as he went along to make sure he understood I was listening to him, and to make sure I understood what he was telling me. At the end of that encounter, I told him thank you for willing to be open, honest, and vulnerable with me. And I told him that I do not doubt one bit that he was telling me the truth about what he perceived and experienced. And I do believe him. My view and experience leaves me with a lingering curiosity. I never said this to him or anyone, but I feel sure he interacted with things which exist. I always thought that they are probably not what they told him they are. But there were no random hallucinations. As Marzinski would say, they ran patterns. Those patterns fascinated, fixated, and compelled him. I wish I had run up the stairs just as soon as that screen fell. I don't know what I could have done other than sat up with him all night. Luke failed badly, and I failed him. In a way, he lives on as a blessing, because he helped me to redouble my own determination to offer useful and meaningful help to individuals such as him. That red light, though. That red light showed up the night before his accident or self-termination, and never before or since. I do not know if there is such a thing as a target individual, but I think of that beady little red dot and wonder if he was targeted by some disgusting glowy. Thank you for reading, Anons. Please comment as you will.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.